Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a special I'm having difficulty sleeping edition of Uncivil Law. I hope you're having a good day. And as I was awoken and trying to get back to sleep, I stumbled upon an article. And it's been a little bit since we've done an edition in Stupid Letter Time, so I figure now would be a good time to do an edition of Stupid Letter Time. So that is exactly what we are going to do. So for today's Stupid Letter, it comes courtesy of the New York Daily News by Jean Son, entitled, this is an opinion piece of course, entitled, When Your Photography Harms Me. New York unconsensual photography of women. The scary, scary photography, all the good stuff. Let's get started with this. I am a Korean American native of Queens. All right away we know we're in trouble. I don't remember who said it recently, but someone recently said, and I'm sure it wasn't the first time someone said it in an article, but someone said anytime you have to start an article with I am a blank, it kind of undermines your argument, because your argument probably shouldn't depend on whether you are a particular thing or not, right? Because the strength of an argument should not be determined by your characteristics, unless, of course, that is related to a professional field or something that would indicate a professional expertise. So if it is, I'm a lawyer, I am a doctor, and you're speaking about areas of those relative competencies, for example, that might be one thing. So then, like, you're at least saying, well, at least you're purporting to have the credentials and professional expertise to talk about a particular issue. However, if it is I am a woman, I am a man, I am a Korean, I live in New York, then, you don't have any particular expertise from that designation any more than I do. The fact that you're a woman or a Korean or a New Yorker does not, in fact, imbue you with any particular expertise or knowledge that I wouldn't have. So if you're starting your article with I am a blank and you're going with identity theory, right away we know your argument is pretty sus. Okay, let's continue on. Growing up here, the city has often played the role of a third parent in my life. That's probably true for most cities, small or large, I would think. Many people have affinities to their town, big or small. Its museums beckon me in for warmth and beautiful paintings on a chilly day. Cool. The halal carts on every corner feed me when I'm hungry. Nice. When I need to talk, a wise cabbie is only a hail away. So she's able to get a cabbie, so she's got that going for her. So she's not being discriminated against that way. She is able to get a cabbie, apparently. There's only a few times in my life where New York has let me down, and they all happen in broad daylight in some of the most recognizable public places. Ooh, New York has let you down in broad daylight in public. Exciting. When I was 17, I was sitting at Bryant's Park. An older man walked by me with two cameras and discreetly aimed one at me. Fine. I immediately called 911. Okay. Okay. No. As we're going to say many, many times in the course of discussing this, you can take pictures of things in public, in general, because you can see the things in public because there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. So, if someone wants to take a photograph of you, without more, that's not a problem. But this guy has two cameras on him, walking through Bryant Park, and takes a photograph of her. And her immediate thought is to call 911 for what? I don't know. But as we're going to learn, this isn't her first time, or I guess it would be her first time, but it won't be her last time doing this. A police officer made him destroy one of his rolls. He could have just said, no, I don't want to. Would have been a better answer, but he's probably trying to defuse the situation. But he should have said no. Because he refused to say which camera he's used, to this day, I'm not sure if the photo lives on somewhere. This scary, scary photo of you sitting down on a bench in Bryant Park. What I do remember is the violation and the fear I felt as a strange man captured something of mine, my image, without my permission. He got to walk away. Okay. Your image is not something really that belongs to you as such. Again, we can get into specific contexts and specific environments. So if we're in a particular place, like in your home, or maybe in a car, or some other place where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, then we could have a discussion, right? However, if you're just sitting in the middle of a public park in New York, you kind of have the understanding, or at least should have the understanding, that people in general can see you and observe you because you're out in the public in the middle of New York, and a person is taking a photograph of you, and you're like, they didn't have my permission to take my image. So my question is to you, lady, every single photograph you've ever taken in your life where there was anyone in the photograph in the background, did you get every single one of their permissions, including, I mean, I don't know, have you ever been to like Disney World or or some other place, or for that matter New York? Have you ever taken a shot and have you gotten permission from every single person in the shot who might be identified because you didn't have permission to take their image? And he got to walk away for the non-crime of taking a photograph in a very public place. Super exciting. 5 years ago, I was walking down 57th Street. A man with a long zoom lens camera pointed it at me and took a rapid set of photographs. It is unclear from what distance, but the fact it is a zoom lens suggests it is some distance away, because most zoom lenses you can't shoot particularly close. When I confronted him, which means that you had to get close to him, he stated it is a free country, which it is, in fact, a free country. As a woman from Queens in New York, you should be somewhat well aware of this. That's a free country. As he tried to get away, I again grabbed him and called 911. Okay, so you have committed a criminal offense. You are guilty of potential offenses at this point. He is taking a photograph of you with a zoom lens from across the street. Or it doesn't say exactly where, but again, zoom lens implies some distance because zoom lenses are not usually good at taking from any distance close. So presumably you approached from some distance away, and he tried to get away, which, he was trying to walk away, which was his prerogative, and you have grabbed him and stopped him from leaving. Okay, so we have various degrees of criminal charges that might apply to this situation. We have always our go-to of assault and battery, and of course we can always, depending on the exact language of the New York law, which we'd have to go look up, we could potentially get into some sort of criminal false imprisonment or potential criminal kidnapping or some other crime along that way. Again, it would depend exactly on the definitions in New York on how these things are defined, but at least we would be looking through the code to be asking ourselves if any of these definitions apply in New York. But grabbing onto someone is definitely a criminal battery, so you are guilty of assault and battery. Congratulations. Yeah. After calling 911, 4 business improvement district workers approached us and began commiserating with him as I, the victim of the photography. He's not the victim for being assaulted and battered. You're the victim for being photographed. Stood gripping with my perp. He's a perp. He's a perpetrator by his bag. You're gripping my perp. You're gripping the perp by his bag? Oh, okay. So you're gripping the perp by his bag. Well, that could be perceived as an attempted robbery, right? You're gripping the bag, perhaps in an attempt to take it away from him. So that could be perceived as an attempted robbery, as we're now looking up our criminal statutes. Fun. One said I was making a scene, while another jokes maybe he just liked the pictures. You are making a scene. Maybe he just likes the pictures. These are correct statements, yes. The cop who arrived 40 minutes later to this scary 911 call discovered that my assaulter, okay, no, you got that backwards. Okay, you got that backwards on every possible definition. You got that wrong criminally, you got that wrong civilly, you got that wrong in every possible definition. To be an assaulter requires an apprehension of fear of physical harm. Like someone is going to hurt you. Someone taking photograph does not qualify as assault. However, if you're looking for an assaulter in this equation, I would respectfully remind you to look in the mirror, as you are the one that grabbed him and prevented him from leaving. as by your own testimony, by his bag, which, as I pointed out, could be perceived as an attempted robbery. So we got assault, battery, maybe false imprisonment, maybe kidnapping, and maybe attempted robbery, depending on exactly the definitions in New York. So he has committed a grand total of 0 crimes, and you have committed potentially at least 5. Fun. The cop who arrived 40 minutes later discovered that my assaulter, which he's none of these things, had taken dozens of full-body burst shots of me, the horror, which he was told to delete, which again, he should just say, no, I don't want to, because you don't have to. But I suppose he did in an attempt to defuse the situation. I watched him walk away from the non-crime in his tan cap and polo shirt with tears streaming down my face and cramps in my hand. You know, for a woman who grew up in Queens, New York, who presumably is used to lots of people being around her kind of all the time, you seem to have a very low threshold. I was reliably informed that New York people were somewhat grittier than this as a character trait of the living in the Big Apple. So I'm not sure what went wrong for you, but your grit level seems comparatively low to the braggadard notions that your city has been represented as having. So, just noting that here. I wondered whether I should have worn a different dress to work that day. I don't know. I wondered would he think twice before pointing his lens at another young woman. Or more likely he'd be emboldened, knowing that worst he could walk away. Well, why should he think twice? He didn't do anything illegal. He was taking photographs in a public place of you on a public street from distance in a place that you had no reasonable expectation of privacy in a way that didn't violate a reasonable expectation of privacy. So, you know, there's all that stuff. In the wake of hashtag Me Too, because this is definitely a hashtag Me Too thing, right? This is definitely a hashtag Me Too thing. I found myself thinking about that last incident. I was proud I stood up for myself, but promised if I ever happened again, I'd have to do something real about it. She's escalating. She needs to be stopped. She's planning on causing people some serious harm. Then last December, I was in Chelsea with my mother, talking and laughing. A young man lifted cameras inches from his face. It's not illegal, he said. He's art. Get away from me. He'd leave my photo and walk away. Okay, now, this may or may not be illegal. It depends a little bit exactly what we mean by inches away. I am reminded at this point of Legal Eagle when he was talking about the Captain Marvel movie and said the Don was inches away from the woman that he was talking to. And I quibbled with that. I said, I don't think it's inches. I said 3 or 4 feet was what I said. And then some people in the comments got really upset with me. It's like, it's nothing like that. It's 2 to 3 feet. Stop exaggerating. Like, estimating 3 to 4 is a massive exaggeration compared to 2 or 3, but okay, whatever. So, yeah, it was something in that range of 2 to 4 feet, and I quibbled with the definition of inches. So what exactly do we mean by inches? So if it was really inches, we might be talking about something because that fast movement so close to your face could be potentially be perceived as an assault. So, and because it's within your zone of privacy, right? So it's so close to you, it could be a criminal violation, or at least we'd be thinking about it. So it depends a little bit what we mean by inches. But given the overall tenor of this article, I am not inclined to interpret the term inches in her favor, because she seems a little bit excitable from using terms like assault with a little bit of undue care. So when she says inches, I'm somewhat not inclined to interpret that in her favor. So it depends a little bit what we mean by inches, but yeah. So maybe inches. He got up. He's right. it's not illegal to take photos of a person in public. Ding, 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 ding. We've got it. That applies to everyone, incidentally. Because if it were illegal to take photos of people in public, then people wouldn't be able to take photos in public, period. Because, especially in a place like New York, because the odds of someone not being in the photo are, comparatively low because there's so many people in the photo, or so many people. So you wouldn't be able to take any photos anywhere, right? So, yes, it is not illegal to take photos of people in public places. Amazing. But women are victimized by this lack of legal protection of our images. No. In 2014, a DC judge dismissed charges against a man who had taken photos up women's skirts at Lincoln Memorial. In preparation for this video, I looked this up because I wanted to know what they were talking about. All right. So this 2014 incident where this guy took photos up skirt, and she says this was wrong. I looked it up. And what happened is this guy was taking photographs of women who were seated down on the seats of the Lincoln Memorial. And because they were seated down on the seats of the Lincoln Memorial, their legs were such that they were able to see things that might otherwise be concealed from view if the person was standing, right? Because the person is sitting, you were able to see things, and he was taking photographs. And the courts ruled that these women did not have a reasonable expectation of privacy because the things that he were taking photos of were things that were in plain view of a person who was acting in a way that would not defy someone's reasonable expectation of privacy. In other words, anyone who happened to be standing there would be able to observe that if they were looking. And so the camera was not capturing anything that a person would not be able to observe, and therefore did not defy a reasonable expectation of privacy. So when you follow the logic all the way through, it makes complete sense. You don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy if you're the one that's exposing the privacy. So that was what the court said in that case, and that makes sense as a logic track. Okay. A similar ruling in Tennessee in 2016 cleared a 40-year-old man who followed a woman around a Walmart with a camera on their breasts and buttocks. Okay. As a matter of fact, we actually covered that case on this channel already. We did a whole video on it. So we can comment about that case a little bit more intelligently. So in that particular case, that was not actually shown by the evidence. What happened is, again, this man was following this woman around at a reasonable distance. So there was no problem there in terms of stalking or anything. And he was following this woman around and taking photographs in the Walmart of this person. And when the cops actually went to look, they couldn't find any photographs of this woman on his phone. So maybe he deleted them or whatever. So we're not actually sure if he took any photos. Well, it looked like he was taking photographs, I guess would be the right way to put it, because we don't actually know if he took any. So it looked like he was taking photographs. But the court said, and we looked through the case, we did the whole legal analysis on it, that again, it's the same kind of analysis. She wasn't in a changing room. She wasn't, in a bathroom. She was in the middle of the Walmart where she could be seen by anyone who happened to be there, right? And this guy was taking photographs of this woman in the Walmart. Was he taking photos of the breast or butt? We don't know. There were some allegations along that line. It wasn't clear. And based on the evidence that was available, it wasn't clear. And so the court did clear him because he wasn't actually violating the law. At least that could be proved. So, we covered that case. That's law. Fine. And then a court in Texas also sided with a middle-aged man who took more than 70 photos of children's chests and buttocks at SeaWorld. All right, so I took a look at this case as well to see what they're talking about. And in this case, the court struck down the statute that was in play because the statute said, and I'm going to just look this up real quickly to quote it. The statute in place banned photography of another person without that person's consent with, quote, the intention to arouse or gratify the sexual desire. And the court found this to be unduly vague because what exactly does that mean? To take with the intention to arouse or gratify the sexual desire. What exactly does that mean? So the court found that to be unduly vague and struck it down for vagueness, which, I don't think is the most implausible interpretation, because what does that mean? From what point of view? Is it subjective? Is it objective? How are we looking at that? So yeah, the court was just simply too vague. And in the court's opinion, the principal judge wrote, quote, protecting someone who appears in public from being the object of sexual thoughts, which is exactly what it was doing, seems to be the sort of paternalistic interest in regulating the defendant's mind that the First Amendment was designed to guard against. So the court said, you can't do this because the statute is not prohibiting you from taking the photograph. It's prohibiting you from taking the photograph if your desire is for the sexual thought, but you're allowed to have sexual thoughts. So it's too broad. And because photographs are inherently expressive, the speech is intertwined with the expression, which seems like a completely coherent legal analysis. So that's why that case came out that way. Don't we learn so much more by actually looking at the law and actually seeing what it says? It's nice. Taking upskirt felonies is a felony in New York. That's true. And in many places. Why? Because you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, right? If you're putting a camera on your shoe or something in order to take a photograph from underneath someone or otherwise trying to get underneath them, that would be a problem. That was what defines it as an upskirt photo. Because you're violating their reasonable expectation of privacy, you can criminalize that. Right. Did any of these people do those things? No. But while it's great that taking photos of specific body parts is considered a crime, that's not the law. She misunderstands the law. She misunderstands the law. Once again, unbelievable. She misunderstands the law. It is not that it's taking specific body parts. That's not the reason or the rationale. It's that the way they're doing it violates a reasonable expectation of privacy. It's not illegal to take photographs of that body part, as we learned from, for example, the DC case. I don't know if it would come out the same way in New York or not, but, it's not because you're taking photographs. It's because you're violating the reasonable expectation of privacy. So, once again, she misunderstands the law, but, that's okay. We're here to help. While it's great that taking photographs of specific body parts is considered a crime, even though it's not, an act of photographing someone in a degrading, violative way without her consent in public is wrong, and the law should reflect that. Okay, what makes it degrading or violative? Just out of curiosity. So you say without her consent, and we can definitely attack it on those grounds, without consent. Whether or not you need consent is a whole problem. But it's not, she doesn't say merely without consent. She says it has to be done in a degrading, violative way. What makes it degrading or violative? Exactly. According to you. What makes it a violation? According to you. The fact that you don't want it, but that's already built into consent. So see, she's tripping up. She's tripping up in her legal language, or her attempted legal language, because she's using the same word to presumably mean the same thing. We don't like that in law, right? When we're writing a statute or a regulation, we like to have each word have some meaning independently. We assume the legislature doesn't mean the same thing by different words. It is a disfavored interpretation. So when she says a degrading, violative image without consent, I know what without consent means. I got that down. So now I have to figure out what depraved means and what violative means. So what does violative mean? And the only definition of violative she's given me so far in this article is I don't want it. But that means that's the same thing as without consent. So she has done a statutory no-no. She has used two different words to mean the exact same thing. Bad legal drafting. Bad legal drafting. Don't do that. And I don't know what makes something degrading. What does that even mean? And also, why is a photograph degrading? What makes it degrading? Again, what is the definition of degrading? Is it that you don't want it? Then we've used three different words to mean the exact same thing. Bad legal drafting. Degrading, violative, without consent. These should mean different things. When they all mean the same thing, bad legal drafting. New York can't be a safe place for girls and women when any man can point a camera at us and walk away with our faces and bodies in his files. Well, several things to this. First of all, I'd like you to define what a man and woman is, just out of curiosity, for my own edification, because that might be fun to watch that, see how that works. But even more to the point, on equal protection grounds, we tend to have equal justice before the law. So if a man can't take a photograph of a woman, then a woman can't take a photograph of a man, which means no one can take a photograph of anyone because the odds of having someone in the background are pretty decent. And so you're basically outlawing photography in New York or basically anywhere. So, good work on that. No photos at Disneyland because you might have photos of other people that are in the shot. Good work with that. We walk away with our faces and our bodies in his files. No. We should accept an example for the country and protect women against all non-consensual, exploitative photograph and photography. Again, let's try to do this with statutory definitions. So we have tried again to redefine our hypothetical statute. So we have non-consensual. Well, that's the same thing as without consent. All right, so I got that down. Non-consensual is the same thing as without consent. But now we have a new term in our hypothetical statute. Exploitative. Exploitative is a new term in our hypothetical statute. It not only has to be non-consensual, it also has to be exploitative. Okay, what makes it exploitative? What makes it exploitative? Please provide a definition of what makes it exploitative. Is it the same thing as non-consensual? Bad legal drafting. Bad legal drafting. You shouldn't use two different words to mean the same thing. Different words should mean different things. Bad legal drafting. Please provide a definition of exploitative that is not consent. That'd be great. I've been working with Councilman Jimmy Van Bramer on legislation conveying an image privacy task force that will address photography as a vehicle of gender-based violence in public places. Okay. Photography as a vehicle for gender-based violence. I have to wonder here, although I really don't, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer. When she says photography is a vehicle for gender-based violence, does she mean that photography leads to violence, or the photography is in and of itself the violence? So when she says photography is a vehicle for gender-based violence, what is the violence in question? Do we mean like punching and hitting, like that kind of violence? Or do we mean the photography is unto itself the violence? I'm inclined to interpret it as the second meaning. I'm inclined to believe that she thinks the violence is, in fact, the photography unto itself. The photograph is the violence. So this is a derivative of the speech is violence idea. Speech is violence. And now photography, which is a kind of speech, is also violence. So yeah, the photography is in of itself violence. That's not what I thought violence was. But okay. If this bill is passed, and I'd love to see this thing, I'd love to even see the proposal of it and see if it makes any sense at all. But if the bill is passed, the next perp will have to think twice before assaulting another woman. And again, because we want this to be gender neutral, presumably a man. And again, what we mean by assault is the photography, presumably, on our streets in the name of art or a free country. Yeah, having a free country is bad. We can't allow people to take photographs of people. As the city prides itself on progressive values, such as making photography illegal, being a progressive value apparently, and is one of the most photographed places in the world, she doesn't appear to see the problem here. This is one of the most photographed places in the world. Let's stop that from being true, I guess. Okay. We need to make sure our laws are contemporaneous with our increasingly nuanced understanding of women's rights, which again, if we're thinking about equal protection under the law, then women's rights should be the same as men's rights, right? Like women shouldn't have more rights, right? The whole idea of women's rights, at least as I understood it, was the idea that women had less rights in some domains. I think we kind of fixed all those things, but if there's still some areas where they have less rights, then maybe we can go fix those too. But are you saying that women should have more rights than men? Presumably not, because that's not equal protection, right? What is our nuanced understanding of women's rights? And why is that nuanced understanding also not a nuanced understanding of men's rights? Especially when men can become women and women can become man, ? I don't know. And with the consistently evolving ways in which images and people can be manipulated and exploited. If we're interested in people being manipulated and exploited, then we can definitely talk. If we're talking about images being manipulated and exploited, I don't know what to tell you. Please join me and write, call, and email your local council member to voice support for this legislation, which is really only the first step. Neat. This even doesn't go far enough. New York can and should be a safe place for everyone, but especially the women. But everyone, but especially the women, under its watch. And San lives in Queens and works in the nonprofit sector. How fun. Yeah, so that was stupid letter time in all of its wonderful glory. Yeah, we want photography to be illegal. I wonder if I can find this this legislation somewhere. I wonder if I Google it, if I can find if there's a draft out there. Let me just do a quick Google search and see if I can find this random bill. Let's see. Let's try just his name with photography and see if that does anything for us. No, we apparently cannot find any draft of this legislation, which makes me think that it doesn't exist, and perhaps the councilman is humoring her because it doesn't make any sense. So, all that good stuff. Yeah. Let's read some super chats that we got along the way. 10 Australian dollars from Nuva Zero. Documenting Karens is a civic duty. Plotting accompanying locations such as the wider public may avoid terrorists. What if such touching is a mistake as consensual courtal foreplay? Uh-oh, Karen. Nice. £5 from Igmar. Only the voting machines voted for Biden. And 10 Australian dollars from the First Immortal. Happy International Men's Day, I suppose. Is that today? If it is completely unintentional. If it is International Men's Day, it is completely by random chance. Is it really International Men's Day? Because that would just be too funny. Apparently it is. Apparently it is International Men's Day. That is just way too hilarious. This has nothing to do with International Men's Day. This has to do with, this was written a month ago, and I just came upon it. This has to do with me waking up at 3 a.m. and Googling around to get to sleep, and me just stumbling upon this article, and I don't even remember where. So now the fact that it's International Man's Day means I've committed a horrible, horrible man crime. Because not only have I mansplained, I have mansplained on International Man's Day. I'm an exemplar of all that is wrong and bad. That is just too funny. $5 from Robert Lovito. I wish my life was so good that I had to whine about photographs. I feel you, man. I feel you. Yeah. Nice timing indeed. I guess it was fated. I guess it was just fated to be that it would be on International Man's Day. Have it in my bones, something like that. Okay. All right. And then I have a slightly personal favor, and I'll just say it now as I read through the chat on the off chance that anyone can give me an answer to this. Okay. So I was on a stream with Viva yesterday morning and night and Nate Brody, and it was good. I had a good time. And at one point in the discussion later in the video, we came upon the issue of, the validating of the ballots and things like that, or the recounting and stuff like that. And we got onto the topic of matching the signatures. And I said something along the lines of, I think that would be difficult because the signatures are not on the ballots, and they may not be detached, right? So, there may not be a way to do a second signature verification. And Nate Brody said, well, I signed the ballot. And I'm like, really? You did? He's like, yeah, I did. I'm like, And then so we moved on a little bit, and I came back to it. I'm like, I have to say, I'm surprised you signed the ballot. I think that would be odd because it would break confidentiality. Maybe you signed the envelope, but you didn't sign the ballot, surely. And he's like, oh no, wait, maybe I did sign the ballot, sign the envelope. I'm like, yeah, it would really, really surprise me if you signed the ballot. All right, so that is my position and remains my position. It is my belief and my position that there is no state in the United States that for an absentee or a mail-in ballot, you actually sign the ballot. I believe that you could sign the envelope. I believe you could sign an inner envelope. I believe that they might require you to submit a secondary paper with the ballot, maybe a proof of ID with the ballot, right? A copy of your driver's license or something. I believe that with the ballot. I believe that. What I don't believe is there's any state that requires you to actually sign the absentee ballot. All right. And there were several people in this YouTube chat who were insulting me and calling me all kinds of names. And there was one guy in the YouTube comments who's basically calling me an idiot and saying, why would you open your mouth if you didn't know what you're talking about? You know, you're a bad lawyer. And why would you? I wish we had Robert Barnes on. He knows the election law. He knows that you have to sign ballots. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I don't think there's any state in the United States. I don't think there's even one state in the United States where for any mail-in or absentee ballot, you actually sign the ballot, which was my claim. So if anyone out there can show an instance where the rules require you to sign the actual ballot, let me know, because I think I'm still right, and I think these people who are calling me idiots are in fact idiots, and I'd like to know. Yeah. So let's just go back up to the top of the comments, and I'll get down to anyone who is answering my question. I did have one more super chat, but we'll go back up to the top. 10 New Zealand dollars from James Stewart. Thank you. As an aside, I live in New Zealand where we don't have separation of powers. Our executive is the head of the legislature. Could you yell about how silly that is? Well, I don't know if it's silly or not. It's just a different style of government. I mean, that's true of the parliamentary system in general. The prime minister, who is the head of the government, although not necessarily the state, and in fact, I don't think is ever the head of state. I'm not sure that's ever the same person. But anyways, usually the head of state in a parliamentary system is a very ceremonial role. Anyway, not that it matters, but whatever. But anyways, in a parliamentary system, yeah, the head of the government, the head of the executive branch, is the prime minister, who is elected by the legislature. Is that silly or not? I don't know. It's just a different way of doing things. It has its advantages. It has its disadvantages. It does mean that there's no separation. It does mean that there's no attempt to split the political branches of government, which may or may not be a good thing depending on your point of view. So I don't really have a extremely strong position for or against it. It is just different. Our system provides advantages. Your system provides advantages. Which is better? I don't know. You can go either way, I guess. But thank you. And $4 from Greg Polanski, who gave me some coffee. Thank you very much. When the cop's actions violate the man's rights, deprived him of property without due process. Asking him to delete it or ordering him to delete it? Yeah, potentially. The ordering him to delete it could be viewed as a seizure. So there might be something there. That'd be fun to sue under 1983. I mean, you'd lose unqualified immunity, but it'd be fun anyway. Probably, at least. Spoodoodle 6000 said, call up with your appearance with Viva Nate. Great show. Thank you very much. The woman is a dingbat. Yeah. You and your member stream stopped me from skipping back to the beginning. Hopefully I come in halfway through the preamble. Okay. Oh my God, I thought I was up early. Yeah, I'm definitely up early. I couldn't sleep. A woman is upset. Very funny, yeah. So I can take photographs on a public nude beach, right? In the United States? Yeah, probably. Unless there's, I mean, it might depend on the specific states. We'd have to get into it, right? If there's a specific state and if there's a specific regulation for that park because of the nude beach, we'd actually have to get into it. It could be an interesting issue whether or not a state or government could ban photography on a nude beach. There are not many nude beaches in the United States. I think there are a couple, but not many. But it'd be interesting on the legal issues whether or not a government could actually do that. So I don't know. It'd be a little bit hard to take the position that you have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But well, if it was a private facility, you could do it because then it's not a governmental action. So if it's private, you could do it. So if it's a private nude beach, no problem because it's not governmental action. If it's a public nude beach, It might be interesting to try to get into legal analysis about whether or not government could do that. That'd be fun. Scooter said, I have to wonder how this got published. She's not a mental case. She's talked to her legislature, man. She's talked to her legislature. There's no Me Too anymore. Joe Biden has changed the narrative. I think it's true. A million inches is still inches. That's a fair point. The sun is inches away. That's true. She wear a burqa. Just popped in. What's this all about? It's stupid letter time. We're all filmed in public all the time. I still go in my PJs. Exactly. So if someone is flashing you, you can take pictures of them? Yeah. Yeah. If you're in a public place and they flash you and you take photographs without more, I'd say yes. I say my red hot mini dress for inside my home with curtains drawn. Cute. So basically, if your eyes can see it, a camera's allowed to. As a general principle, yes. But again, you'd have to be slightly careful. If you're taking photographs in people where they have a reasonable expectation of privacy, you might have a problem. So even if you can see in through like a neighbor's window and see them in their house, taking photographs of them in their house might be a violation because they still have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their house. So it's not quite, if you can see them with your eye, you can take a photograph of them. It's whether or not they have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the place they happen to be. And so in their home, probably not. In a car, probably not. In the middle of a store, probably yes. Yeah, you're in public view in your windows, but you still have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your house. So I think you could still make a credible case for that being illegal to take photographs because of course the home is special, and the car is sometimes thought of as an extension of the home and sometimes not. So yeah, home might be a problem. Car might be a problem. Business might be a problem, but randomly on the street in the middle of the park, definitely not. Can drones go past no trespassing signs? Maybe. Because airspace is regulated by the FAA. So it would be an issue of airspace. So yeah, maybe. And then someone said, as long as the drone is over 200 feet at the top of the building and the flight plan is verified by FAA of about 500. Yeah, so you'd have to go look at the regulations. FAA controls airspace, so it might not be illegal. A non-lawyer misunderstands the law. Shocked. Yeah, exactly. My fees trump your civil rights. That appears to be the case. I bet this person would demand the right to photo or video a man for doing something that upset them. Yeah. So they can file a flight plan to hang out in front of my window? Probably not. My window's off the street and high up at sea without a ladder. No, I think, I don't know. For the flight plan, maybe. But still with the photography, I think even, because the photography wouldn't be an issue of air administration, right? So if you're talking about the flight plan, we're talking about the FAA. If the drone has a video camera on it, we're still like in normal law world probably, because of reasonable expectations of privacy. Now, again, if you're flying over their house at like 200 feet, you probably don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Not for at least the reasons you can't see anything that you'd have a reasonable expectation of privacy in, right? The land in general is probably open fields for the most part. And even to the extent it's curtilage, you're probably not going to get there. So yeah, if you're taking photos from 200 feet above the house, probably you're okay. If you're taking photos even next to the window, even if you're authorized for the flight plan, you might have a problem. Safe is relative to health. Yeah, that's what I think. $5 from Robert Lovito. Is a reasonable expectation of privacy the reason you can't photograph inside a lot of government areas, post offices? No. The usual reason that you can't photograph inside governmental areas is that you can't photograph like security operations. So you can't photograph ongoing security operations usually as a general rule. But I don't know there's a general rule against photographing in government buildings in general, although there might be. But I have to get into regulations. Also, because it's indoors, the analysis would change a little bit. Because again, even though it's a public building in some sense, if you're inside the building, you have a greater expectation of privacy than you would outside the building. So even though you're in a kind of a public place in some sense, it's more of there might be, and also it gets into the ability of the government to regulate its own spaces as a quasi business owner. So that would be in the other part of the analysis, right? So when the government is acting as a quasi business owner, it gets more leverage than it would just generally. So when the government is operating a post office, it's operating as a quasi business owner, and so it gets a little bit more slack to do things like it were a private business in some of those situations. So it might be able to ban photography for those reasons. But yeah, you'd have to get into exactly what you're talking about. But expectations is probably not the reason. It's 5 o'clock. Why are we awake? I don't know. It's 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock Central Time now. I'm awake because I can't sleep. President Trump grew up in Queens and has a typical Queens attitude. Yeah, that's true. Maybe photograph only in women's safe spaces. That's funny. Would she have issues if a lesbian were taking photographs with her? I don't know. Is it a trans lesbian? I don't know. So this person wants to remove women from movies because they show up and people watch the movie with a woman in it. Yeah, something like that. Photograph as a vehicle for gender-based violence sounds like a module in women's studies degrees. That does sound like that. That's true. It's probably a whole course. It's not just a module. It's a whole course. You know, it's Women's Studies 601 or Women's Studies 607. You know, photographs as a vehicle for gender-based violence. It's an entire damn semester course. Doing something a woman doesn't want without communicating that is gender-based violence. That's very true. There can be no gender-based violence since gender is a social construct and is fluid. That's a very good point. Very cute. Very well spotted. Nice job. Kurt has been on a roll lately. Thank you. I appreciate that. Raising a single finger is also free speech. Yes, very good. As an attack helicopter, I consider all photography as espionage and hence an act of war. I like that. It's very cute. I like that. That is a very sophisticated use of the attacks helicopter meme. It's a very old meme, but it checks out. Just get women to wear burqas, maybe. Oh my God, I hit this guy and he walked away from me. That was violence. That was violence. Him dismissing me. This is person. Yeah. Okay, where was I? Welcome to 2020. Yeah, a little bit. I wonder if photography would be okay in women only safe spaces. Yeah. I volunteered when my son played sports, but that's as much of kids as I can handle. That being said, I pray for these children losing 2 school years. I agree with that. Listening, that was like watching a car wreck in slow motion. That's right. No name says she's a female engineer and supports MGTOW. That's fantastic. Glad to have you as part of the cause. Men should be allowed to do what they like too. That seems like a good thing. It's just promoting freedom, right? And Slayer just makes me think of surveillance cameras. That too. Huh. Interesting. Oh, yeah, I did miss one super chance, chap, I think. From Igmer, £5. Keep up the good work. Great channel. Are you in BitChute? I was uploading things to BitChute for a while, but I haven't been for a while. YouTube shenanigans are killing YouTube, yeah. I did see that YouTube changed its terms so that they're going to start withholding money for federal taxes, which is just as well, because then it means I don't have to deal with it. So I don't care because it makes my life easier. So YouTube said we're going to treat them as royalties and we're going to do federal withholding. I'm like, that's fine, because now it doesn't mean that I have to account for that withholding. It's not like cheating me out of money, right? It's taxes I was going to have to pay anyway, and if I overpay, I'll get it as part of a refund at the end of the year. I'm going to have to wind up writing the IRS a check this year. So if I don't have to write the IRS a check next year because they already have the money, then that's better for me. So I'm perfectly fine with that. So I didn't really mind that chain. Oh, is Nate the lawyer here? Nate the lawyer is here. Yay. Hello, Nate the lawyer. Nice to have you here. I'm always happy to have Nate. As a New York lawyer, I'm happy to have Nate here. It's 6 a.m, Nate. What are you doing up? Couldn't you sleep either, man? Lord. Birth is violence, yeah. You're a mansplaining leader. All hail. That's funny. Hard to have an anonymous ballot with a signature. Yeah, that's what I said. It's like, I can't believe that there's a state that has signatures on the ballot. I still can't believe it. And the chat in Viva Stream was calling me an idiot. And one guy in the comment thread was saying, you're an idiot. Why would you say this? Because you don't know what you're talking about. I wish Robert Barnes were here. He knows the election law. He knows that there's signatures on the ballots. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's not. And I went, and Viva said I found one of it, and I actually woke up this morning thinking about it, and I went Googling, and I'm like, I can't find one. I can't find one. And I can't believe it's true, because it would be insane for there to actually be a signature on the ballot. I can't believe it. So I'm still looking, and yeah, we'll find it. Yeah. And some people were pointing out the envelopes might have a barcode that matches the ballot. That's possible. And then once you throw the envelopes away, you can no longer match them. So I believe that you can match the ballots. So that would be a way that presumably you could do signature matching afterwards. So when I said I can't think of how you could do signature matching for the revalidation, someone did answer that question. It's like, okay, sometimes they have barcodes that match the ballot to the envelope. I'm like, okay, then you can go back and match the signatures as long as you keep the envelopes. And then once you get rid of the envelopes, you no longer can do that. But if you keep them for the recount period and then dispose of them, then you would be able to do that. So that I believe. But that the signatures on the ballot, I do not believe that. You may be able to match the envelopes to the ballots. That's possible. And then you get rid of the envelopes when you're done with whatever recount certification that you are, and then you can no longer match them. So that makes sense. The head of state is Queen Elizabeth. Yes, I know that. I am well aware that the head of state for most of these places is Queen Elizabeth. I know they're different, yes. At least formally, if not de facto. No, it's de jure. The head of state is, in fact, the queen for a lot of these places. She is the head of state for a lot of these places. It's de jure. It's law. It's mostly ceremonial. Her theoretical powers are interesting as queen. She has some theoretical powers, not that she actually invokes them. But, as head of state, she has theoretical powers like she can theoretically de-recognize countries. She could theoretically declare war. That kind of stuff. So that's fun. Jane Doe says she loves my content. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate it. Governor General is the representative of the Queen and head of state. I don't think that he's technically the head of state, but he is the representative, yes. And he does have the authority to do things on her behalf in the country. But I believe, and my knowledge of the relevant law is a little bit bad here, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe if the Queen happens to be in the country at question at the time, the Queen can act as head of state. So he's only the representative, and I believe she can be dismissed by the Queen too. So I don't think she's actually the head of state. She's just acting in this capacity. So it'd be like the pro tem. He's head of state pro tem, something like that. Yeah. Most nude beasts are USA or private property. If it's private property, then you don't have this problem. Yeah, I don't know much about the Girl Gone Wild lawsuits. The thing with the Girls Gone Wild lawsuits, and I could be mistaken here, but the issues with the Girl Gone Wild lawsuits would probably be the extent to which the problem with the Girls Gone Wild lawsuits is not that the photographs were taken. The problem with the Girls Gone Wild is that they were used for commercial purposes. That's the problem, right? So it wasn't the taking of the photographs and video that made it problematic. What made it problematic is that it was being used commercially, and that makes it a problem, where you have to get the person's consent for the commercial use. And then there was the issue with the waivers and so even where there were waivers, that maybe they were being signed when they were drunk or incompetent. So the problem in the Girl Gone Wild cases was not that the photographs were taken. The problem was the commercial use of those photographs in the DVDs, and to the extent that waivers were taken, the lack of consent. So that's my understanding there, and that's what the difference would be here. But good point from Nate the lawyer for reminding us about that, so I could bring that to bed. Why am I up? I don't know. You getting the kids up for school? Well, it's nice that they're school still, I guess. What about publicly accessible business? Is it the same in the home or like a mudroom of a home? Yeah, no, well the business can regulate the photograph. So like with the guy walking around in Walmart, that guy, if Walmart had a policy against it, they could kick him out. They could trespass him. They could ban him from a store. So Walmart could forbid it as a matter of private policy. I'm not sure they could make it like illegal as such, but they could kick you out of the store and prevent you from ever shopping there again. So if Walmart in that story with the 40-year-old guy from Tennessee was following that woman around, if Walmart wants to create a policy of like no photography in our stores, they presumably can do that because it's a matter of private business. It's not a legal violation. It's just a private violation. Then they can say never come in our store again. And if you ever come in the store again, then it's illegal because now you're trespassing. I'm expressive in my streams. Thank you, John. I try to be expressive. You can't fight drones over police emergencies. Not familiar enough with the relevant regulation to comment on that. It is an early stream because I'm awake and I don't want to be. I'd rather be asleep, but here we are. I wouldn't be surprised if Uncivil has a chat censored by choice. He seems a bit sensitive, says Jay. My chat's only sensitive to the extent that I prevent excessive caps and excessive symbols because I just think that it's visually annoying. So I just have I just have those two bots on at the moment because I don't think people screaming in all caps is particularly productive, and I don't think people spamming emojis is particularly productive. So I do have two bots to like check for those things and delete comments when they go past the line because people who are yelling on all caps, don't yell in all caps. It's shouting and rude. Don't shout. So she invokes them through the governor general. Yeah, well, that would be like giving command or a subordinate. So yeah, why not? Yeah, all your laws have to be passed through the Queen's representative, but the Queen's representative always says yes. It's one of those theoretical powers. It's like we need the Queen's approval, but she always says yes. The last time the Queen said no was what, Queen Victoria? It's been a little bit. So the Queen has we need the royal assent, but they always say yes. It's like, what's the point? Why not say no sometimes? Yeah, the Queen hasn't said no in what, like 140 years or something. But yeah, you need their assent. It's just like pretty much automatic because they never say no. You know, dismissal of the Parliament. Yeah, that too. I thought the Queen who deflates war or declares war. I don't know. Yeah, the Prime Minister is usually the one who just does it. I think technically it's on the Queen's recommendation or something, but she can do it unilaterally. Yeah, yeah. Dismissing the PM. That's another thing they can do. Like dismiss the PM. They can do that. Yeah, that kind of thing too. Just for the hell of it, that might be fun. Didn't there used to be a thing about so many number of people in the photo before it was considered a public photo? Don't know what that would be referring to. Not familiar with that. You're only watching for Nate's comments? That's nice. Please help me prepare for the next topic. Bloody Mary or screwdriver? I don't like Bloody Marys personally. I don't like Bloody Marys, so I'd have to go with the screwdriver. It's not for me. Give me a mimosa. I don't like a Bloody Mary though. The AP is declared legal. Legal is the only law channel. That's funny. I don't mind the rules. Next channel's the Wild West. There it gets interesting. Yeah, I just don't think that all caps is good. Then you have people just basically yelling in all caps, and it's disruptive. And you just have these emojis. Why don't you actually type like a cogent thought? I don't think it's that restrictive. I 1708 was the last time roll of cent was used. So what did I say? 140 years, and it's actually been 272. So I was off by almost double. Queen is still the head of the armed forces. That's true. I am in Texas. Yes. It wasn't that cold. Yes. Yeah. Yesterday. Also, things are opening a little bit. I had the pleasure of watching Dave Chappelle perform yesterday for free, because my apartment overlooks the stage in which he performed. Yay. So yeah, I got to watch Dave Chappelle yesterday. So that was nice. So apparently things are reopening, and the governor said there will be no new lockdowns. So hopefully it will be like this forever and ever and ever. One can only hope. It was kind of nice outside last night. Would I define reasonable expectation of privacy? I mean, it's hard to define clearly, but okay. Well, I mean, when we're talking about, we're talking objectively reasonable, so it's the reasonable man test, right? So it's the reasonable man test. Would a reasonably prudent, ordinary person feel like they have an expectation of privacy in this situation? Would you expect to be private in this situation? So, if you were in a phone booth, not that they exist anymore, but yeah, if you're in a phone booth, yes. If you're in the middle of the park, no. If you're in your home, yes. If you're in a car, yes. If you're in your business, probably yes. Would you feel like it would be reasonable to expect to be private there? Or would people in general feel like it, right? So yeah, would a reasonably prudent person feel like they have an expectation of privacy? That's how you do that kind of thing, right? If aliens are being stealthy and you photograph of UFO, is that a violation of privacy? It is not, but thank you for the question. What are the ramifications of nearly everyone having Zoom that sees further than the naked eye? How does it change what a reasonable expectation of privacy is? That's a pretty good point. Because just because you're in the middle of a park might not necessarily see, this can go the other way too. So even if you're in the middle of a park, it might not necessarily preclude you from having a reasonable expectation of privacy, depending on what else is going on. So if it might depend, even in that situation, what is reasonable. So if the person is taking it with a zoom lens, the question might be, how big is the zoom lens, right? Because if the person is walking by on the path and takes a photograph, that can't be a violation of privacy. If they're taking it from a zoom lens, how big is the zoom, right? And this is also the same thing with a shotgun mic that you might get into. So if someone's trying to record a conversation between two people, putting aside eavesdropping issues, which can get into the same issue, but putting aside eavesdropping issues, or wiretapping issues, one of the issues might be the reasonable expectation of privacy. For example, another situation where this came up, which went perhaps the other way, was one of the Project Veritas things, give me a second, Planned Parenthood and their ilk. So one of the things that Veritas did was take surreptitious audio at a restaurant dining room. And in one sense, there's not a reasonable expectation of privacy, but in another sense, there is, right? So, because you can kind of see where people are and where they are or where they're not. So, would you reasonably expect no one to overhear a conversation? No. But would you reasonably expect, if you're talking low enough? Yes. So, was there a reasonable expectation of privacy in that situation? The court said yes, and that's a reasonable view. It's even though it's in a public place, and even though if someone was walking by the table, they would be able to overhear what you're saying, perhaps. If you are trying to keep your voice down and, you don't expect there to be a video camera right in your space, that might be a violation of reasonable expectation of privacy. So it's not necessarily categorical. Sometimes it can be a little bit more complex than that. But, that's where lawyers get paid. So, fun times. Yeah, I don't think it's anything visible from public property. That's a little bit too broad. Would I vote for Matthew McConaughey as governor? Probably not. We got a governor here in West Virginia is trying to create law without going through the legislature. That seems to have been a bit of a problem recently. Because I do live streams in my dining room, would that make my dining room no longer private? No. No. I have a reasonable expectation in general on my, whatever you can see, I wouldn't have a reasonable expectation of privacy on because I'm exposing it. But that doesn't mean that and again, it can be an on-off kind of thing. It's not like you lose it indefinitely. It's not like once you lose it, it's gone. So I don't have a reasonable expectation of anything that you can see because I'm making that available. But once the thing's off, I have a reasonable expectation of privacy again. So yeah. Hello from Paris. Nice to have you there. Thank you for being here. E-News on Rittenhouse. He's been expedited, which was a foregone conclusion. The only issues with the request for expedition or extradition were technical, but as long as there's been a valid request from the relevant authority, it's required by the Constitution. So he was extradited, which surprised literally nobody. And beyond that, I don't know where things are inside of that. I don't even know where he is at this point. Is he in jail or not? I don't even know. Has he been bonded out or not? I don't know. I guess we could Google it real fast because why not? Let's see. That's right. There was a 19-year-old who gave him the rifle, who was charged with 2 felony counts of selling them to who's a minor. So he might be problematic. So he's transported to Wisconsin, but it doesn't say anything beyond that. So I don't know if he's still in jail or if he was bonded out. I mean, it was a $2 million bond, but I would think that he would have gotten that from people. So I don't know if he's still in jail or not. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be an article on it, so I'm assuming that he's still in jail. It was a $2 million bond, which was a fairly reasonable bond, actually, given what was going on. And I would have thought he'd been able to raise it, but I think he still might be in jail. But yeah, he was extradited, and yeah, that's there. Does a single person's consent change the status of reasonable expectation of privacy? No. No. Uncivil law for Texas governors, thank you. Wisconsin, does he have to post the full amount? I believe that's correct. I believe in Wisconsin he does have to post the full amount of the $2 million. But even though it's the full amount, I still thought he'd be able to clear it because I thought he got enough in supports from GoFundMe's and stuff. So I thought he had enough to clear it. But perhaps he didn't. But yeah, I do believe he does have to post the whole amount in Wisconsin, yes. I mean, $2 million is a lot, yes, but I mean, he is a pretty sympathetic figure, and a lot of people believe he got wronged. So I thought he would have been able to raise the money, but Didn't the governor say he'd pardon Rittenhouse? Couldn't speak to that, and I would doubt it. $2 million cash is a reasonable bond for this offense? Yeah. For this offense, yeah. He's accused of murdering 2 people. Yeah. I mean, I know that he has good self-defense claims, but a $2 million bond for 2 murders, the fact that he has any bond is a slight miracle, to be quite honest about it. So yeah, $2 million bond for this crime is actually pretty reasonable, yes. Yeah, it's actually kind of low. So, yeah, it's reasonable, yes. For 2 murders with a 3rd shooting, I know he has really good self-defense arguments, but they are affirmative arguments, and we haven't gone that far. So the state does have a prima facie case, right? The affirmative defense thing is going to come later, right? The state has the prima facie case, no problem. They got the probable cause, no problem. So like in setting the initial bond, you look at that, and so like a $2 million bond, yeah, it's pretty reasonable. Now, I'm very hopeful that he'll get it dismissed on a motion to dismiss, and I don't think we've gone that far yet. But as an initial setting a bond, yeah, $2 million for 2 murders, pretty reasonable. And in the end, I think they're justified murders, but we haven't gone that far down the page yet. Yeah, he got boned with his legal team. I believe that completely. I'm not sure. I'm sure Lynn knows. Yeah, Lynn knows where the money went. Yeah, his legal team may be boning him. His legal team raised him over. He raised that money. His legal team has a fiduciary duty. I'd remind everyone, and if they have the money, they need to bond out the client. That would be a pretty high priority to bond out the client. So, you'd at least discuss it with the client. You'd be like, I have this big pile of money. I could use the money to bond you out, or in the alternative, here's some reasons I might not want to bond you out. Now, there might be reasons not to bond you out. The reasons not to bond you out would be particularly if I wanted to go for a speedy trial motion, because usually in most places, when you're actually in custody, you get extra time. It accelerates, or it can. So like sometimes you get like double or triple credit, or sometimes not. So it depends. But one of the reasons I might want to keep you in jail is if I want to go for a speedy trial motion. Now, usually the defense wants more time, so it'd be an unusual strategy, but it would be a valid strategy. So, like, one of the reasons I might keep you in jail is because I want to force the state for a speedy trial motion, and I want to get there faster. Also, another reason I might want to keep you in jail is because if I take $2 million out of legal fund, I won't have enough to defend you, which seems a bit unlikely in this situation if we're talking about any kind of money. I mean, even this kind of defense, I'd imagine we're talking about. It shouldn't be that expensive, all things considered. I mean, you're talking, to do it right. So I think there'd be enough. But yeah, you'd at least discuss it. But yeah, if they're blowing through the money or they don't know where it is or something, then they're being bad lawyers. Is it a murder if it's self-defense? Isn't it just killing them? Well, to be proper, I should have said justified homicide instead of justified murder. But it's 5:40 in the morning. Give me a break. So yes, I shouldn't have said justified murder. I should have said a justified homicide. Yeah, it is a homicide. It is a homicide. Whether or not it's murder or not, we haven't figured out. So yeah, I shouldn't have said justified murder because that doesn't really exist as a concept. What I should have said was justified homicide. So that was my bad. But again, it's early. I haven't slept. Give me a break. Is he safer in jail or public? Potentially that too. He needs better lawyers? Yeah, probably too. $14.99 Australian from Wayne Smith. Great chat. Thanks for enlightening me. No problem. Was murder the case that they gave him? It was, in fact, yes. I thought bond was to ensure the individual shows for trial, not to show this charge equals this bond. Do I misunderstand bond? No, you don't. But the more severe charge, the more severe the charge, the idea is the more likely it is for you to flee, right? If you're being charged with jaywalking, you're probably not going to flee. If you're being charged with 2 counts of murder, you might be more incentivized to flee. So the logic of scaling the bond to the offense is because the threat profile of you trying to run away becomes higher. So again, to have any kind of bond for a murder is kind of a miracle. $2 million bond for 2 different murders with a third shooting is it's actually a pretty generous bond. Because, you have to factor in what's the probability of this person fleeing. 2 murders and another shooting. This person fleeing from justice isn't exactly beyond the realm of possibility. So $2 million as bond to secure that seems like a reasonable amount. So, yeah. Homicide is killing, murder is the criminal act of killing. That's right. No one saw Uncivil merch. Yeah, $10,000 for a DUI does seem a bit excessive. That seems a little bit much for a DUI. What the hell were you doing? $100,000 just for a DUI? Was it like your 25th DUI, or were you also like swerving and like, were you DUIing through like a farmer's market or something? $100,000 for a DUI seems a little bit much. Do I concur with Barnes on their Rittenhouse legal team and their performance thus far? I honestly haven't looked into that particular issue, and I'm also a little bit loath to criticize other lawyers in the heart of battle because they have to make decisions based on information I don't have. So I'm a little bit loath to criticize other lawyers without really looking into it. So I'm not willing to make those kinds of statements from my position right now. Didn't the charging documents basically spell out self-defense for Rittenhouse? A little bit, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the government laid out its case and also laid out the things that Rittenhouse did. So yeah, it made apparent the argument. And yeah, so yeah, I think Rittenhouse has a pretty good shot at the self-defense argument. The only thing that's sort of potentially complicating is that first shooting. But there's enough, especially when it was like, if you go back and watch my videos, like when the Rittenhouse thing first happened, I was expressing a lot more doubt, and people were really salty with me, which again was annoying. People were really salty with me initially, because when Rittenhouse thing first happened, I was a little bit more skeptical on the first shooting because we didn't have as much information at the beginning. And so I'm like, it looks like it probably is, but it might not be, because we don't have enough information. We don't know exactly what's happened. We don't know who said what, whom, and blah, blah, blah. We didn't, and people were really, really salty with me. This is absolutely self-defense on civil law. Why can't you see it? You don't really love the Second Amendment. You're not a Republican. You're a cuck. Why won't you admit that Rittenhouse has the best self-defense case in the history of ever? And I'm like, okay, guys, look, based on what I can see right now, and this is, again, in the early days of this, based on what I can see right now, it looks that way. But I can think of things that we don't know that might suggest the alternative. No, this is absolutely self-defense. Who are you to doubt the purity of Rittenhouse? Blah. I'm like, you guys, yeah, I don't know enough yet. I don't know enough. Now, at this point, I do know quite a bit more. Right? Because now we have more information. Right? We have additional videos. We have additional witness statements. We know a lot bit more about the guy who was shot, about him antagonizing, the things he was saying, blah, 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 blah. And so now we have a lot more information. And so now I can state with quite a bit more confidence, yes, I think this is self-defense. My doubt has been eroded by further information. I've gained more information, and it has solidified this case. As I gained more information, my confidence grew. Amazing, deep. But you say to anyone, geez, I just don't know yet because there's not information, and it's not what they want to hear. And they're like, Uncivil law is the worst lawyer ever. Down votes. Hate this guy. Second Amendment, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh my God. What if we just look at the evidence and we also say that at that point that there's gaps in the evidence, and we also say that there could be developments that might suggest other things, and maybe it could go the other way, because we don't have enough information. Maybe we should express some doubt. But apparently doubt is unacceptable on my channel. I don't know. It's frustrating sometimes. Okay. Oh, I'm happy to go on Rekieta's again. I have no problem going on Rekieta. I like him quite a lot, and I'm happy to go there. I don't have anything in particular I want to talk about him with him right now, and that's not because I'm insulting him. It's just nothing in particular I want to talk to him about. But if he wants to talk to me, I have no problem doing our stream with him. I've had fun. I think he's had fun me being on. I think. So if he wants me to come on again, I'm more than happy to do that. And I do need to invite him on my channel because he said like 2 or 3 times now, if you want me to come on during the day, just let me know. I think he wants me to invite him as a courtesy. So I probably need to schedule a stream with him probably next week. Well, next week's Thanksgiving, maybe after Thanksgiving. I don't know what we'll talk about. Maybe we'll talk about election stuff if it wraps up or whatever. But yeah, I definitely need to schedule with him on my channel. So if we don't do a stream on his channel before then, we'll definitely do one on mine. I'm a beautiful bastard for caring about what other people think. I do care about what people think, you know? And it was like I said, it was like I was saying 20 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago when I was saying about the YouTube comments with Viva Stream. And people were calling me an idiot and a moron. And the one guy saying, who is this Uncivil Law? Why does he talk about things he doesn't know about? I wish Barnes was here to talk about the election. He knows what's up. He knows about the signatures on the ballots. He knows what's going on. And so I'm like, But then I go look at it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm still right. But yeah, I respond to negative feedback like a lot of people. And then, it's like I can't make people happy. I tell them the Trump lawsuits aren't going anywhere. They're not happy with me. The men suing for the draft because women aren't included. And I told them that's not going anywhere. They're not happy with me. The Vic Mignogna people, both sides of the Vic Mignogna people are now pissed off at me. The Vic Mignogna fans are pissed off at me, and Law Twitter's pissed off at me. So I got both sides of the Vic case pissed off at me. That's fun. What else? Yeah, and other things like that. So it's like, sometimes I can't win. I just cannot win. U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that cops have no legal obligation to hold detainees while they're being held. Does that put the perp as a disadvantage? I don't know the case you're referring to and the context. They might not have to tell you why you're being arrested, but I'm not sure about the detained thing. So I'd have to check what's going on there. What you can do is say how you defend Rittenhouse if you were his lawyer, then everyone will like you. Yeah, fair enough. But I try to be a little bit more objective then, right? I try to put myself in the position of a judge, right? I try to put myself in the position of a neutral arbiter. And I'm like, okay, well, here's some weaknesses, here's some strengths, here's the assessments of the case. Oh, the Floyd thing also, with the Floyd on the knee on the neck, and me saying I think the cops are going down for murder. Yeah, I got the pro cop people pissed off at me for my analysis on the Floyd thing by saying I think Chauvin's probably going down. Don't you know he died of the drugs? Don't you? Oh my God! Don't you know he was a repeated criminal? And don't you know about his blood toxology and what it showed? I'm like, yes, I know all those things. I'm well aware of literally all those things. But here's the law. Don't you know about the fentanyl? And don't you know about he's saying he couldn't breathe before they ever put hands on him? He was saying it when he's. I know. I understand all these things. I understand all these things. I just think that it's going to be tough. Don't you know this? Why are you talking about Saint Floyd that way? Chauvin did nothing wrong. I'm like, ignore the haters. I probably have to. First Immortal, I'm a left winger. I really appreciate Kurt takes a cautious and facts based approach. Follows reasoning, understand where he comes to conclusions, even where I disagree. That's really all I can really hope for. And it's all I can really hope for from the left, and sometimes I'll read court opinions and I'll be like, yeah, I understand, I just don't agree. It happens, and and sometimes I read it and I'm like, I don't understand and I don't agree. Like with Roberts in the DACA case, I'm like, I don't understand this doesn't make any sense. So there are definitely times where I understand it and don't agree, and there are times where I don't understand it and don't agree. And DACA was definitely one of those things with Roberts. It's like, yeah, at least in like the gays in the workplace case, I thought Gorsuch had the much better argument. I understood where Kavanaugh was coming from, but I thought Gorsuch had the better end of the argument, but I understood Kavanaugh. With Roberts in the DACA case, I'm like, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. But, Recchiette's in acquired taste. I like him. I like Recchiette. He thinks along very similar lines than I do. So he thinks very similar to what I do. He just has a different personality in mine, which I find interesting. Yeah. Yeah, there's no Kraken. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. He upset the mob by putting out the dumpster fire. Yeah. See, like when the thing first happened, we didn't know about that, or at least I didn't. Right. That information came out later about the dumpster fire. The information about the antagonism came out later. Like when it first happened, there were a lot of unknown questions, and like yeah, and all you had initially was that first video, which showed like I don't know how long was that first video, like a minute, and of the key interaction, it's like the real key interaction in that video is probably about 10 seconds, if that. So I'm like, on this 10 seconds of video, I'm a little bit loath to draw a conclusion. And then I found out about the dumpster fire. Then I found out about the extinguisher. Then I found out about the guy who was like basically egging on people to shoot him repeatedly. So he got what he wanted. And then he was chasing him and so forth and so on. So as I learned more information, I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Riley says I'm doing it wrong. You're meant to take a blind guess, and if you're right when it comes out, great. Okay. If not, you're in too deep to admit your mistake, so it's time to double down. I don't know if that sounds like a good thing. I don't know that I'm really just supposed to take a blind guess, and then if I'm wrong, if I'm right, praise me for my brilliance, and if I'm wrong, blame the world. It doesn't seem like the greatest thing. What if instead of doing that, I expressed a little bit more uncertainty when there's more uncertainty, and be like, here's what I think is happening. Here's my level of confidence that that's happening. Here are some things that might cause that to not happen. But no, apparently I'm supposed to go with blind conclusions to the end of the page. Okay. Jennifer says, no way, you're real. I am real. I try to be. I am a lawyer on the internet, yeah. Sometimes riding the fence does that. You try to stick by your own side if you're wrong, just like your mother. I guess it's true. What's my stance on Vic? My stance on Vic is I think Vic is going down in flames at the Court of Appeals. I think he has a 90% chance plus of getting destroyed in the Court of Appeals. I don't really think Judge Trupp screwed up the case as best as I can tell. I think that the appeal is not going anywhere, and I think he's likely to lose. And the 10% remainder is kind of like technical wins that don't really go anywhere. So I don't really see a lot of avenues. So like, I think there's a 90% chance the Court of Appeals affirms. I think there's like a 10% chance they reverse. Of that, of the 10%, 8% is like they reverse on technical reasons, but it doesn't really matter in their end. And 2% is they reverse in a way that is actually going to make a difference. So I don't really see this going anywhere as best I can tell. That's what I think is happening in the Vic case. Wasn't the key interaction the guy going for the gun barrel in the first shooting? Maybe. Floyd resisted arrest, true, and refused to get in the police car, true. Doesn't matter. Drunk stream when Vic smacks the appeals court around when? Yeah, I mean, if I'm wrong, it'll be interesting to see in what way I'm wrong and how wrong I am. Like, because there are degrees in which I could be wrong, right? There are degrees to which I could be wrong. So it could be I'm wrong because because somewhere along the line the court made one determination one way where I went the other way. And like their decision would be reasonable and my decision would be reasonable, so it wouldn't be that surprising. Or it could be that they interpreted a fact slightly different than I did. So like there are ways that they could reverse that wouldn't like surprise me. Right? So, or ways in which I'm wrong in a technical sense, but like I'm ultimately really right, right? It's a Pyrrhic victory. So yeah, they reverse, it just doesn't really matter, in the end. So there's like, it'd be interesting to see how I'm wrong. So is it like a Pyrrhic victory where, yeah, technically I'm wrong, it just doesn't really matter? Or I am wrong and it does matter, but it matters only in ways that were foreseeable. And so I just picked wrong ends of the equation. And so I just went down wrong paths and I can see the end. Or is it wrong because I misunderstood the law, and does the court explain the law in a way that corrects my understanding of the law in a way that I understand? Or does the court do something that I think is just, do I think the court screws it up? Because I disagree with courts too. I disagree with the Supreme Court. I disagree with courts of appeals. I disagree with trial courts. So maybe I'll disagree with the Court of Appeals. And maybe I'll find their reasoning completely flawed and broken. So it'll be interesting if I'm wrong, why I'm wrong, in what way I'm wrong, how wrong I am, and the rest of that. So that will be interesting. So we'll see. But yeah, if there's a stream, either way, we'll do a stream when it comes down. We'll do a stream. If I'm right, we'll do a stream, and if I'm wrong, we'll do a stream. We'll do a stream either way, and if I'm right, we'll find out how right I am, and if I'm wrong, we'll find out how wrong I am, and find out what ways I'm wrong, and how surprising I'm wrong it was, and what went wrong. Did I misunderstand a fact? Did I misunderstand a law? In what way did I misunderstand the law? Or did I just make a calculation one way where the court made another calculation? I'm like, oh yeah, that's reasonable. I can see that. Or how surprised will I be? Or will I think the Court of Appeals screwed it up? We'll find out. It'll be educational, I suppose. I'm having fun. What more do we know about Rittenhouse antagonizing? Yeah, the first guy that Rittenhouse shot, that first guy, he was caught on camera basically goading people into shooting him for like a half hour before that whole thing happened. So that guy who was shot in the first shooting, that guy was like egging people on and being very antagonistic and basically asking people to shoot him. And so yeah, that makes him more of the aggressor, right? So one of the real questions, the question really is, who is the initial aggressor, right? Who is the first bad actor, all right? Rittenhouse or the first guy he shot? Because the second shooting was pretty clean, right? We had enough video from the second shooting. I'm pretty comfortable in saying that's self-defense. So I was pretty comfortable in the second shooting. But then it came down to the first shooting. How comfortable am I that? And so because I didn't know, all I saw was this guy chasing this other guy. But that doesn't tell me who the initial aggressor was, right? Just because one guy's chasing another guy doesn't tell me who the first aggressor was. So it's like a little bit vague at the beginning. And then we found out about the dumpster fire thing and about that being a thing. And that's like not an illegal act, so that doesn't count for an antagonistic thing. But then we found out the guy he shot was like egging people on to shoot him and so forth and so on. I'm like, that increases the probability somewhat that this guy was the first bad actor in this equation. So in my analysis of who is the initial bad guy, Rittenhouse or this asshole, when this asshole is spending like a half hour begging people to shoot him and being an antagonistic jackass, I'm like, maybe he was the first bad actor with Rittenhouse too. That the probability of that conclusion goes up somewhat. So yeah, that's what I meant by antagonism. That's what I meant by things changing and facts changing. You can't literally shoot someone who asked for it, no. But the fact that he was egging on people on and he was being aggressive and stuff like that, no. But the fact he was doing that suggested an antagonism, that it was informative as to the probability that one person or the other was the initial aggressor. So that behavior was, at least to my mind, suggestive as to who might be the initial aggressor. So no, you can't literally shoot someone who's shooting you. It's just that when trying to figure out who the initial aggressor was, those statements were somewhat suggestive as to who the initial aggressor was, in my opinion. Yeah. So that was the thing that was a little bit vague in the first shooting, who was the initial aggressor. In the second shooting, it was a lot clearer on the initial video who the initial aggressor was. It was much clearer who the initial aggressor was. So in the second video, it's much more comfortable. In the first video, it was a little unclear who was the initial aggressor. And then you learn a little bit more, and like, okay, between Rittenhouse and this guy, who's the initial aggressor? Well, this guy's doing these things. Okay. That kind of changes the probability of who's the initial aggressor, right? So I was like, yeah, I'm more comfortable saying Rittenhouse is in the right. I don't have the Q5 allergies. The second guy saw the execution of the first guy. What would be your response? Well, first of all, execution is a bit of a loaded word. Killing would be a little bit better. And this also goes into, the people chasing Rittenhouse could be in the right, and Rittenhouse could be in the right at the same time, because it's all about perspectives, right? So who has what perspective? So if the people chasing Rittenhouse thought that he was a murderer, which would be a reasonable conclusion to draw at that point, presumably, because the information is a bit vague, and they were chasing him down, for the purpose of arresting him or detaining him or maybe assaulting him, but whatever, right? So if the people who were chasing Rittenhouse thought that he was the murderer and were chasing him down because of that, the people who were chasing them down might very well be in the right. That doesn't necessarily mean that Rittenhouse is in the wrong, right? So they can both be in the right. And then Rittenhouse, because he hadn't done anything wrong, he would be in the right to defend himself. So both the crowd would be right and Rittenhouse would be right, potentially. So the crowd doesn't have to be wrong for Rittenhouse to be right. It would be helpful, but it's not required. So, yeah, if I were in the crowd, would I have chased down Rittenhouse? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. If I thought that he was the bad guy, would I chase him down? Maybe. Would I be in the wrong to do so? Probably not. Would he be in the wrong to respond against me? Technically, no. We can both actually be in the right at the same time. Law can work out that way. So, depending on what the people who were chasing him actually thought in their head, depending on why they thought they were doing it, because we could analyze each person independently, potentially, right? So it might be fact specific to each individual person and what they did or did not know or thought they knew. So if we were trying to figure out from the crowd's point of view, we might have to figure it out for every person in the crowd, and every person in the crowd may or may not be in the right individually, depending on what exactly they knew, what they thought they knew, and their own subjective impressions and blah, blah, blah. So we can do a fact-based analysis literally for every single person in the crowd from their perspective and try to figure out what they did or did not know, right? So we can do that and try to figure out whether each individual member of the crowd was in the right. And assuming some of them were in the right, it doesn't necessarily mean that Rittenhouse was in the wrong. So, yeah, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know that some members in the crowd weren't in the right, but Rittenhouse also was in the right, as far as I can tell. So that's where it seems to be. I don't think anyone else has been arrested in the Kenosha, not that I'm aware of. The guy with the handgun who lived was a convicted felon, so won't be surprised if the feds go after him. That'd be hilarious. Yeah. The guy with the handgun who lived, it was a convicted felon. We have pretty good evidence that he was in possession of a handgun. So, if the feds want a piece of him, It's an easy criminal charge for the feds. Is there a public perception for the crowd, or does it need to be individualized? Well, technically individualized, but mob mentality helps too. So the mob mentality would be informative, but technically we could do it for each individual person, right? Some people could be justified and some not. It's possible, right? Because every person is an individual legalized analysis. If you're trying to ask if a person is legally justified, you might need to ask if every single person is legally justified, right? At least potentially. So you might have to do the analysis for every single person individually. And the fact that there's a mob mentality element would influence that to at least some degree, but you could potentially do it for every single person, right? Every single person's legal analysis might be slightly different because the facts are different for every single person in the crowd. They have to be, right? They have to be. What's the probability? What's the probability that any two people in the crowd chasing Rittenhouse had exactly the same facts? Right? What's the probability that any two people in the crowd, heard the same exact thing, saw the same exact thing, so forth and so on? What's the probability that any two people have exactly the same factual posture? Right? Probably pretty low. I think it's pretty low. I think it's low enough to assume it's zero. I think it's low enough to assume that no two people in the crowd have the same exact factual posture. It's close, but is it exact? No, probably not. And law is fact specific. Law is fact driven. So because law is fact specific, because law is fact driven, and because I think it is unlikely that any two people in the crowd have exactly the same factual posture, therefore, it is possible that the analysis would come out differently from person to person. Right? So you might have to do an analysis for every single person in the crowd. Right? Because the factual posture isn't exact. It's close, but it's not exact. And differences can matter in law. So, yeah. You might have to do a factual analysis for every single person. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to sign off and try to get some sleep again. If you enjoyed this stream and question and answer time, and you enjoy the Uncivil Law trying to answer some of your questions and lamenting the life of the law guy who wants to actually try to present thought out opinions rather than just merely being a hack partisan and either going to the end of the page and either reveling in my own genius or doubling down at being angry in the world for being jackasses. If you like that kind of thing where I try to actually look at things and try to present complicated pictures when I think it's complicated because I think it's what's needed, if you'd be so kind as to like this stream, I would appreciate it. If you've not already done so, if you'd be so kind as to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Please hit the subscribe button. Please help this channel grow. And for 99 cents a month, you too can become a member of the channel. It's true. There should be a join button somewhere on your screen. If you hit the join button, you will become a member of the channel. You will get access to my batch records and also my off-brand live streams. So sometimes I do gaming and stuff. And sometimes I do Alex Jones impressions. Ooh. And if you become a member, you can watch and observe these things and revel in them. And if you're not a member, you won't be able to do that because they're hidden behind the membership wall. But not to fret. It's only 99 cents a month. It's true. For 99 cents a month, you too can become an uncivilian. You'll get your name in green. You'll get access to these things. And I will like you more. So, do that. Until later, my friends. This has been Uncivil Law. I hope you're well. Until later. Cheers and goodbye.